Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of Inside the Club, a Utah Mammoth podcast from the Salt Lake Tribune. I'm your host, Belle Fraser, and we have a breaking news podcast today, and I'm joined by Mike Harrington from the Buffalo News. Mike, thank you for being here. How are you doing on sleep? Yeah.
None of these 12:45 a.m. Eastern time trades. It happens every so often, not too often, but this one went late into the night with about a 2 a.m. file of a column. But that's what we're used to on the Eastern time zone sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah, I thought I was tired, and then I was like, I can't complain. We're on Mountain Time. There's people up way later than we are. But what we're here to talk about today is Utah acquired forward JJ Peterka from the Buffalo Sabres in exchange for defenseman Michael Kesselring and forward Josh Doan. Peterka was a pending restricted free agent, but he agreed to sign a 5-year, $38.5 million contract extension with a $7.7 million average annual value with the Mammoth as part of the trade. Kind of a surprising deal to fans because I'll ask you about this. How available did JJ Peterka seem from the front office from, the NHL trade deadline in March up to this week ahead of the draft?
Well, there was a lot of denial at the trade deadline. There were certainly a lot of rumors surrounding the New York Rangers, and Kevin Adams, the GM here, flatly denied those rumors. And I think that was pretty much the case, that he really wasn't that available at the trade deadline. And I don't think the Sabres wanted to move JJ Peterka, but I think as things moved on here, as we got closer to the draft and free agency, it was pretty clear they were going to have difficulty signing him, and maybe he wanted a change of scenery. It is kind of funny to us as we saw how quickly he signed that extension with Utah even before the trade was officially announced. So I just think he didn't really mesh with Lindy Ruff, I don't think, and I just think was looking for a change of scenery, and Utah offered that.
Given those circumstances, what was your initial reaction when you actually saw the trade go through?
Well, your knee-jerk reaction right now with everything regarding the Buffalo Sabres is they're making mistakes. You slow it down and you start to think about it, and the Buffalo Sabres in Kesselring just got their right-handed defenseman they desperately needed to play alongside Owen Power on their second pair. So that's a pretty major investment for the Buffalo Sabres. Josh Doan is a guy who clearly makes them tougher to play against. But you have taken away their number 2 scorer, a 68-point guy, a guy who scores a lot at 5-on-5, 55 goals in the last 2 seasons. So the biggest takeaway I had was everybody has to calm down. Everybody go to their battle stations, go to their corners, and realize there has to be something else here. There has to be another move coming or two to get a top 6 forward back in here. And Bowen Byram is clearly on the trade market, and that could be it as well. But this is just a first step kind of move.
Got it. And I want to go back and get into kind of what you were talking about, what went wrong with Peterka in Buffalo, because a few days ago in pre-draft news availability, Adams wouldn't confirm or deny if he requested a trade. Where do you see things kind of turning for Peterka where he wanted a new environment? And do you think that kind of benefited Utah in what they were able to give as a return, because Peterka just seems like he wanted out either way?
Well, I think Peterka didn't really mesh with Lindy Ruff very well because Lindy Ruff wanted him to play a little defense. Mm-hmm. Just recently, an hour or two ago on Twitter, I tweeted out a video, and Utah fans can look it up, a goal by the hockey club back then. How many times you've forgotten to say Mammoth recently, I bet?
It's too many to count.
So it was a good game the Utah Hockey Club played in Buffalo in December, and Kesselring just absolutely toasted JJ Peterka out high, creating a goal for Nick Schmaltz in a game. And it's the kind of play that we saw several times this season that drove Lindy Ruff insane. His analytics, his defensive numbers are not good. His defensive awareness is not good. Now, he's also 23 years old. Sam Reinhart's defensive awareness was not great in Buffalo either, and Sam Reinhart is now a Selke Trophy-level scoring forward for the Florida Panthers. So things can change and guys can evolve. But, if you didn't like Lindy Ruff harping on you on defense, well, Andre's going to do the same thing in Utah. All Peterka has to do is ask Jack Quinn, who played for Andre and Jr. in Ottawa. So he's going to have to become a more rounded player and a less one-dimensional player. And I just think Lindy Ruff is told Kevin Adams, we have to make changes with this core. They just traded Dylan Cousins in March, and I think J.J. Peterka was the next one that Lindy Ruff said, we got to make a move here.
About Peterka's defensive game, that was going to be my next question. You kind of mentioned it, how there's still room to grow for him. Do you
Absolutely.
think this change of environment will help? Do you think he can become a better defensive player? Because like you said, Andre Torini, all of his players are two-way players. He benched Dylan Guenther for, a period and a half this year because he wasn't playing good enough defense. He has no problem benching Logan Cooley. So how do you think Peterka will kind of respond to that? Was it a Lindy specific problem, or is it, a coachability issue in terms of defense?
Oh, I think he's just still learning. He didn't play defense at times in Rochester, and he had a great year in Rochester. He didn't play defense at times under Don Granato. Don Granato kind of excused it. I do think one thing people in Utah may not totally grasp right now is how difficult it is to play for the Buffalo Sabres. Everybody talks about the media in Toronto and Montreal, a place like that. And it's not a media thing in Buffalo. There's a lot of media here, and there's pressure in the media, but this is just a very difficult environment to play in because they have the longest playoff drought in the history of the NHL. They're at 14 years and counting. They hear about it every day. The fans jump them quickly when they aren't playing well, when the power play is backfiring. They hear a lot of boos in the building. At times, it can be a very toxic environment, and that is tough on young players who have lost a lot here in the last couple of years. And I think that really negatively impacted J.J. Peterka at times. I think he liked it here, but I think the environment was very difficult. It is hard for a young player to deal with that situation in Buffalo right now. And I just think there's none of that toxicity in Utah right now. The Love Fest is on, as it should be. They just got a new franchise. Now they've got a new logo, a new name. There's just so many positive. The arena is going to have tremendous renovation. So many positive things going in Utah now. Probably really freshens J.J. Peterka up.
It's definitely a different feel, a team that's trying to turn a corner and, was only 7 points out of the playoffs last year. And I think their imagined role is for Peterka is to be a top 3 scorer on this team, top 5 next year. So I think that should be exciting for him. And in that vein, why should Utah Mammoth fans be excited for J.J. Peterka? We've talked about kind of the behind on the back end, but why should they feel good about this deal?
You have to watch this guy's hands. I'm telling you, he has tremendous hands. His ability to move the puck and create space for himself is just elite. His shot has room to grow, but he's got a great shot. He understands how to find open spaces in the offensive zone, how to find open spaces tight down low. He really hunts pucks pretty well. I wish he would hunt pucks in the defensive zone with half the gusto we see at the other end, but that's why he is a 28-goal scorer. Do I think this guy has the ceiling to be a 35, 40-goal scorer in the NHL? Absolutely he does. And that's why they should be excited, because his career high of 28 goals is not where he's going. He's going higher than that. He does need to become a better two-way player. But, in terms of getting an elite scoring talent added to Utah's top 6, this clearly gets the job done.
And he finished most of the year on the first line, which Tage Thompson, Josh Norris, first power play unit. Do you see that being able to kind of translate in Utah? How do you see him slotting into this Mammoth lineup? I mean, you don't need to know the exact lines, but do you think he can come in and have that top 6 presence that he did in Buffalo?
Yeah, I think absolutely. He starts, it's a new team. You got to move into the lineup and see where you fit. Start him on the second line. Don't give him all that pressure right away. But this is a guy who is going to be on the top line in Utah a good chunk of the time right away this first season. That's what they acquired. That's what they're paying $7.7 million a year for, and they'll get it. And they'll get their 30 goals from him. There's no question in my mind. And, so from the Utah standpoint, they have to be excited to add that kind of player, because that's a hard player to get if you don't draft him yourself.
Looking at the contract extension, you mentioned 7.7 AAV for 5 years. Pretty, good term and AAV with the cap going up for, you sell on his potential and what he could be. Do you feel like Buffalo would have matched that? And do you think that is kind of the right ballpark for a Peterka contract right now, the one that Utah did sign him to?
Well, it's a tad high, but I think we've all got to adjust to everybody being a tad high now with this cap going up, because agents are going to suddenly add $1 million to the bill here for everybody, given where the cap is going. There was a lot of talk about offer sheets in Buffalo with Peterka, and would the Sabres match it? And I think they would. I think that was the issue, is you weren't going to get J.J. Peterka on an offer sheet. The Sabres just going to match it anyway, and now they'll have the guy signed and trade him if they want to trade him. So the only thing I was watching would the Rangers do something stupid like hit the $11 million threshold. And then you say, might have to take those 4 first-round picks and trade them and get somebody else. But that didn't happen. So I would say the Sabres were probably looking in that $6 to $7 million range anyway. So it's not a huge overpay on Utah's part at all.
Got it. And looking at him away from the ice, a lot of Mammoth fans were sad to see Michael Kesselring and Josh Doan go, because they're just great human beings in the community, really good fan reception the first year here. What type of human being is J.J. Peterka, and what can people kind of expect from him, his personality, who he is apart from a hockey player?
Well, he's very prideful on his heritage. He comes from Germany. He's going to be on the German Olympic team. The only reason he wasn't in the top 6 that were announced was because he didn't have a contract yet, and the German Federation didn't want to get involved in that. So, the Mammoths just acquired a guy they're going to be able to follow into the Olympics in Italy next year, and that's always fun for teams to do. I think he's a young player, and young players like the experience of being in the NHL, and I think he's, it's certainly not a place he's familiar with. It's not like they traded him to Boston or Montreal or somewhere. The Sabres only been there once. Yeah. I came out. It was a fabulous couple days out there. I'm sure he had the same reaction I did. So he's going to have a lot to learn about a completely foreign area, and I think he's really going to be excited to take on that challenge.
And then looking at what Michael Kesselring and Josh Doan are walking into, I have a feeling that a lot of Mammoth fans are going to be tuning into a lot of Buffalo Sabres games this season now. How do you view the role that they could have on this team and, the stage of the franchise? Will they have a bigger role because of where Buffalo is? Where do they fit into the group they already have there with the Sabres right now?
Well, I think Kesselring is a key guy. Immediately, right out of the box, a right-handed defenseman, which is exactly what their number one goal was the entire offseason. Get a right-handed defenseman to play for Owen Power. Maybe they preferred a little more of an experienced guy, but Kesselring certainly has a lot of room to grow. He's 6'5". He's got some physicality, and that'll be good. Doan is another guy who can mix in on a lot of various lines. There's a lot of open spots on this club. A lot of forwards move around. Lindy likes to change the lines, and they really need to be tougher to play against. Some nights they are, some nights they're not. Josh Doan's going to make the Sabres tougher to play against, and the Sabres, and especially Lindy Ruff and Kevin Adams, they love bloodlines here. And I think you can't go wrong with the kind of bloodlines you're talking about from Josh Doan, given Shane Doan's career. So that, I think, is a big factor, too. And they realize these are two guys who have a lot of room to grow, and they have opportunity to give these two guys room to grow. So, I think a lot of fans in Buffalo are understandably underwhelmed at the return, but I think they went through that last year. They didn't like trading prospect Matt Savoy to Edmonton for Ryan McLeod, who became a 20-goal guy and a key player here. So I think they just have to see how this plays out, and we'll see how it goes. The initial reaction was very negative, but like I said, I think right now the initial reaction to anything the Buffalo Sabres does is negative, and we just have to see where it goes.
We just talked to Michael Kesselring. You kind of got your first impressions of him, but he mentioned knowing Devin Levi. They're on the Northeastern men's hockey team together in college. But more importantly, Tage Thompson, Tage Thompson, and Josh Doan were all on Team USA for World Championships, won the gold medal there. What kind of leader is Tage Thompson, and how do you think that will kind of help the transition for those two guys coming in?
Yeah, what a great experience they had to go to the Worlds, win a gold medal for the first time since 1933 for Team USA on a goal in overtime by Tage Thompson. So they learned firsthand what a superstar Tage Thompson can be and a guy with 50-goal potential. And Tage Thompson is clearly one of the leaders in this dressing room, along with Rasmus Dahlin, the captain, along with Alex Tuck. And these guys are now moving into the next stage of their careers. They're not in their early 20s anymore. They're getting into their late 20s, close to 30, really feeling the pressure to win here. And Tage Thompson has felt a lot of pressure his whole career. He was traded for Ryan O'Reilly, and Ryan O'Reilly won the Conn Smythe Trophy and the Stanley Cup the next year. So he had to deal with, you were traded for Ryan O'Reilly until he became a star in his own right. But a big move for Kesselring and Doan to come play with some of these guys. the Sabres have a lot of talent, Belle. They have a lot of top-end talent who had pretty good years. They have not had the depth they've needed on defense. They've not had the goaltending they've needed to get where they need to get to, but they certainly have plenty of building blocks that Kesselring and Doan can join.
Got it. And we'll wrap up with this. On paper, it can be easy to say that the assets Utah gave up are less than the assets they received from the Sabres, but it's hard to see who actually won a trade until both players are in the system, they're playing, you see their impact. To you, what's the best case scenario for both the Sabres and Utah for both teams to feel good about this deal? What is Peterka's ceiling, you think, and same with Doan and Kesselring?
Well, the Sabres are desperate to make the playoffs this next season. Everybody's getting fired, Belle. Everybody's getting fired if they don't make the playoffs this year. Contracts are expiring. This is a desperation time. So it's going to be a tough situation for Kesselring and Doan to come into, but I think they have a real chance here to make a real impact. Conversely, Peterka the same way. He's got a long-term deal. He's going to grow up with a lot of these players in Utah, and there's some stars already. Look at Clayton Keller and Cooley and Genther. There's guys already in Utah who every team in the NHL would want. And it's the same kind of thing as Buffalo. The Mammoth are trying to build to become a perennial playoff team. And J.J. Peterka knows all about that. He was trying to do that here. He'll be able to do that now with Utah. And he understands what that takes, how your game has to go to another level here, especially in the Western Conference. But I really think, the best player in the deal is J.J. Peterka. So right now, the Utah Mammoth have won the trade. Things can change over time, like you said. But I think both teams are happy with what they have. That's the bottom line in this one.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much. This was so informative. I'm sure Mammoth fans are excited to hear a bit more about J.J. Peterka. And if they want to follow your Sabres coverage of, the two players they lost, where can they find you for the next season?
You always can look at BuffaloNews.com and on X at by M Harrington. And we have a lot of Sabres chatter, as you can imagine.
Yeah, awesome. Well, everyone go follow that, and thank you for tuning in.